Good afternoon. Welcome to the December 3rd meeting of Health and Human Services. Number 2, Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much for coming. Next, 3, adoption of agenda. We have a motion by Drollet, support by Romano. Any discussion? Please vote. Thank you. Number 4, approval of minutes. We have a motion by Sauger, support by Drollet. All in favor? Please vote. Thank you very much. Number 5, public participation. Anyone in the audience wishing to speak? Going once, going twice, going thrice. Public participation is closed. Just as a point of information, I'd like to wish everyone a happy Hanukkah, because apparently today's Hanukkah. So, joy to everyone. Next, Department recommendation, budget amendment, Michigan Department of Health and Human Services, amendment number 1 to the fiscal year 2018-19 comprehensive grant agreement. Bill Rodella. Director Rodella, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair Dujang. Good afternoon, Commissioners. The State of Michigan Department of Health and Human Services has given us our first amendment to our comprehensive agreement. Within that is an increase in resources for a total of $384,426. We are asking that our 2 of our accounts, our Health Grant Fund and also our Health General Fund, are increased by the amounts seen in the recommendation, which will total $384,426 in new resources to support some of the activities going on in the health department and a couple of additional grants that we have received as outlined in the documents you have. So,
before we proceed, can I get a motion and support? We have a motion by Leonetti, support by Kraft. Questions? I have no speakers.
I got one question.
Commissioner Leonetti.
Good to see some grant money in here. Is this something that you normally would get and apply for every year, or is this some new grant money that's coming in on this?
Each year we probably have anywhere up to 4 amendments to our grant with the state.
Right.
So these are redistribution of some resources, some additional funds that they've received from the federal government.
Okay.
And again, in here are some new state dollars that came with the FY 19-20 budget.
Okay. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? We have a motion and support. This will be forwarded to finance. Please vote. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Number 7, A, Martha T. Berry monthly report. Kevin Evans, director. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Commissioners.
The floor is yours.
Thank you. This is just a quick recap at the end of the year. We've talked about a lot of things this year. So I'm going to do a quick recap and then talk about a couple of things that I think it's important to, that I've heard in the marketplace that I just want to emphasize so that we can keep it in the front of our minds. This year we discussed the silver tsunami and how our facility is positioned as a social safety net and why the county facility is needed here. We also discussed the difficulty in the climb to a 5-star facility. Our goal is 5 stars in 5 years. And we talked about starting at that 1-star facility across the board except for staffing. We are at a 3-star on quality measures, 4-star on staffing, and we're now a 2-star medical facility overall. We have staffing levels that are some of the best in the state, which, and it's related to the direct hands-on care is what we're talking about. For CNAs, which provides 2/3 of the hands-on care, we are ranked 26th in the state out of 443 facilities. So we're putting the money where it needs to be. We continue to shoulder the legacy OPEB pension and bond. We're going to talk about that a little bit coming up. And discuss cash flow. There was concern that we're not viable. We are. And we can talk a little bit more about what we're looking to do in the future on that. And we're continuing to build the infrastructure that is old. One of the things we have talked about in the past were collapsed pipes. One of the things that I shared with the county chair, but I didn't bring to the committee meeting, was we actually had 2 electrical fires back to back within 3 hours of each other. They were both during some power fluctuations in the county, and they were on old transfer switches. Both of them caught fire. Our emergency systems worked beautifully. We communicated to the county, to all, and made over 200 phone calls to families to let them know that their loved ones were fine. Some areas that I really want to focus on. Skilled nursing occupancy rate really is at a low in most areas. And the purpose, or the reason for that, if you look at most journals and most analysis, is that there is a lot of push to get people out of skilled nursing facilities. So some of the facilities in the area, you see, you might wonder, well, why are they building 5 of them in the county? Well, those are assisted living, which is a lower skill set than we have. It's also primarily private pay. So when we talked about this, I assured you that, that there is a need for our facility because there is a gap in care on Medicaid that's becoming wider and wider. Fewer people want to serve the Medicaid population. And I explained it that we would need to focus on, at some point, our need would be apparent. I didn't expect it to be this quick. If you take a look at this year, 2018, our census has gone up from the lowers that we had, the lower area that we had in 2017. I expected the trend to stay low for about 2 or 3 years before the silver tsunami came. But what's happening is the business of long-term care is moving people out of their skilled homes, the for-profits, and we're getting more and more of the residents actually from other facilities because they don't want to care for those that can't afford to pay. And if you take a look at the bottom line on this slide, the average census in the state of Michigan is 81.9%, which would translate to us to be about 177 residents. We've never gotten to the average. We've always stayed well above it, and now I'm pleased to say that we're in the 95th, 96th percentile, and that's because there's a need for us here. We talked a little bit about are we really viable? So I just wanted to recap this and remind you of the question of really, can we afford to do the work? And the answer is yes. Our EBITDA, which is before those earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, all of that we're in great shape on that. Our legacy debt is hitting us, but we're managing it. Right, this was a 6-month review, and it shows the difference between our EBITDA and what's happening with our net profit and loss with the legacy cost of pension, OPEB, and the bond repayment. So the annual liability, and the reason I'm sharing this with you is I did hear some conversation about selling Martha T in the community again that came from county government, and I know it happens from time to time. And I want you to know a couple of things. First, we are very much needed in this community. Secondly, we're doing a better job year after year making sure that the sustainability of this model is functional for years to come. And the third is if you do sell it, you will gain liability that you currently don't own. Right now, the pension and OPEB and bond repayment is an annual expense of over $3 million. So if, for example, you said, today's the day, the building's in great shape, you did a really nice job on it, Kevin, thank you very much, have a nice day, we're gonna sell it. You could do that, but right now you would have, over the next 4 years, a $3 million expense here. Now, I'm not even talking about the loss in revenue because of somebody else buying it and you losing over $3 million, actually it's closer to $3.7 million in revenue coming into the county to employees. I'm not even talking about that. I'm talking about just what the liability direct out of pocket would be for the county. We are 100% funding this, and we'll continue to do so. So I just want you to be aware of the numbers that are in front of you, that if you're considering it, this is what you would have for the next 4 years, and then when the bond is repaid, you'd only have a little over $2 million a year that you'd have to spend for 20 to 25 years. So that $45 million that you would have to pay over the next 20, 25 years, if it's worth selling, then that's a decision you have to make. My job is to give you all the information. I believe it's not a good deal for you, and I think it's a bad deal for the care of our seniors in the area.
All right, thank you, Kevin. I need a motion to receive and file. We have a motion by Toko, support by Kleinfeld. Commissioner Brown.
Thank you. Are you paying for your long-term liabilities as you go? How are you addressing your long-term liabilities, your pension liabilities?
We're paying them annually. We actually have a combination. The long-term liabilities, we became part of the bond for that, so we paid our OPEB and pension pre-funding ahead of time, so we are ahead of the fund on that, according to Steve. I talked to him today about that.
Okay.
And then we have our annual required contribution, which is going down significantly next year, from what I understand.
So your projections going forward are positive then, it's not becoming a bigger burden year after year, it's becoming less.
It's becoming a consistent burden, but it isn't becoming greater, no. We're unusual as compared to the county related to pension and OPEB because the pensioners that have been here a long time, and OPEB, and they continue to put money into it. We are a smaller component of it, and as I understand it, we're kind of segregated inside the pension fund, but because we have more turnover, we pay a larger percentage of the ARC because the actuaries say, well, you don't have as many people paying into it now that you had before. Mm-hmm. So that's why it's a little bit more significant to us than it would be for the county proper. And one of the unintended negative consequences of separating from the county in that way.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next, Commissioner Drollet.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks, Kevin, for your report. Appreciate it. That over $3 million in liability we'd have over the next 4 years per year. I don't know if we were to sell it today, for example, I don't know what we would sell it for, but couldn't we pay off that liability with the proceeds from the sale?
Well, that'd be up to you on how the county does that, but your liability for that pension and OPEB wouldn't go away. You would have that responsibility.
Right.
So that would be a $40 million. So if you think that it's going to wash, you'd have to make that decision at that point. But right now, what I'm saying is, what you would essentially do, because how much is the building worth, do you know?
I have no idea.
All right. It's a 65-year-old building. Let's be generous and say it's worth $45 million. I'm being really generous. Mm-hmm. Okay? You would go through all the work of displacing 200 residents, 250 full-time staff and another 60 part-time staff, and you would, because they would be fired and have to be rehired, you would have to own that, and you would have to pay off all that for the benefit of breaking even. So if that's the desire, then just to say, okay, we're done with the risk, you're essentially taking a service out of use for the community.
Well, why would it take it out of use for the community if we were to sell it? Wouldn't people still be able to use if somebody's buying it to maintain it as and we could sell it with a condition that they accept Medicare residents?
Did you see what happened in Oakland as it related to that?
No.
Okay. Well, they lost a ton of staff. They lost a lot of benefits. They lost a lot of money in the community. And I'd encourage you to take a look at what happened there and then see if it makes sense to happen here. But What I'm telling you is now more than ever, there's a need for it. And if you're selling it, you would sell it to somebody that would not be having the same mission that we would have.
I'm not familiar with what happened in Oakland County. I should brush up on that, but couldn't we, again, sell it under the condition that they accept, certain types of residents? Especially if there's a need for that.
Well, I'll let you try and market that.
Okay.
I would. I won't speculate that somebody would say it would be they'd love to do Medicare, but that's a short-term fix. And that's why the Medicaid population is being ignored more and more. So, from a marketing standpoint, I don't know how the commission would try and do that. It'd be a significant disruption to the community proper. And I don't believe it's the right decision, but it's not my decision to make.
Okay, can I break in for a minute? Chairman
Leon,
Smith
can I
wanted
just
to...
speak to your point real quick? Just
Please.
doing that type of work with Medicaid patients in nursing homes, I will say that it is almost impossible to find rooms for Medicaid patients anywhere because they're squeezing them out of every facility because of the money that comes in. We get more money here because we're a government agency for Medicaid patients
So
than they get.
We get
So-
a higher reimbursement rate or something as a government agency?
That's
Correct.
Okay, than somebody in the private sector would.
Right.
Right, so the private sector limits their beds to almost none. It's tough to find a Medicaid bed for anybody in a private use facility in this county. So I just wanted to point out
No,
that it is a
that's helpful. I
difficult.
do not have a lot of this information, so I appreciate it. So in other words, if you and I set up a similar hospital and we accepted Medicaid patients, we would get a different reimbursement rate than the county is getting.
You'd probably go
Yes.
broke quicker.
Well, don't say-
Okay.
don't say quick.
I appreciate that input, and I thank you for your report. Thank you.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Carabelli.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the report. Couple quick questions. You hear that the heads in the beds is going up. Do we have a waiting list now to get in?
We were full, actually, for 5 days this last week. We knew we were going to have some discharges, so we had 4 people that were ready to come in today. Unfortunately, we had a couple pass away.
So we don't have a waiting list per se.
We have 1 or 2 at a time. Sometimes it's because we don't have a male bed or a female bed, but I would say that the waiting list is short, but it is a waiting list from time to time that we have.
That's great. I would appreciate, next time you guys come and you make a report, I would ask you to let us know of, since the last report, how many of the residents are actually Macomb County residents and how many are not Macomb County residents.
Certainly.
We would like to know that as we go forward. Zip code would be fine too, but I'd like to know what percentage are Macomb County residents, because it makes a difference. So, thank you. Thank you, Mr.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Sauger.
Kevin, I looked at the thing and it's a report from you. I'm not denouncing you, but I haven't heard in recent meetings of us even talk about selling Martha T. Berry or what it was. But the idea that you brought it up, when that guy over there in that typewriter or whatever that computer gets a hold of this, we may see a little section in there, county commissioners consider selling Martha T. Berry. It's not going to be sold as long as I'm on this board. I hope I get the support behind it because I've had people over there and I got people over there now that I know well. So you're doing a heck of a job. I wouldn't even be talking about the word sale. Just talk about improvement. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Kudos on that one, Commissioner Sauger. Commissioner Kleinfeld.
To piggyback on that, I just wanted to say if those discussions are going around, I didn't get the memo. So I don't know who's having them. Maybe some commissioners up here are, but if they are, we aren't all aware of it. So wherever the discussion is going on, I don't think it's at this level, just to let you know. That doesn't mean there aren't people here discussing it. It just means as a board, we're not aware of it, number one. And number two, if you're self-sufficient, I'm quite happy with that, so I don't have any complaints. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you. I've got no other speakers, but I'd like to throw in my 2 cents. I haven't heard anything about selling Martha T. at all. I think the improvements and the progress that's being shown by Martha T. is a credit to you, credit to your team, and credit to all the residents and workers, employees of Martha T. You're doing a nice job, and I think things are getting better. And I think discussions about sales of Martha T. under any circumstances is pretty much premature. So I don't think I take that. There's always going to be talk about a variety of things, some of which are based in reality, some of which are not. I don't think this is based in reality, and we'll see how it goes from there. But I think you're doing a nice job over there, and keep it up and keep going in the right direction.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. It's important that the commissioners know that my focus is on transparency. So when I hear an allegation that is general, I think it's important to bring. If I hear it more than once, I think it's important to bring here so we can have this discussion. I'm very grateful for the conversation that we have so that we can talk about why it's important. I do appreciate your support for the facility. And Commissioner Sauger, I will take your recommendation to heart, and this will be the last time I bring this forward. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That being said, we have a motion and support to receive and file. Can you vote, please? The vote is 10-0. Thank you very much, Kevin.
Thank you.
Just for information, I thought it was very, very important to have our lobbyist, Gary Owen from GCSI, here as soon as possible. He's next on the hit parade. Lame duck update. Gary Owen, GCSI. Good afternoon, Gary.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate the time, commissioners. This came together late, like everything does in lame duck, and so if it works, I will walk through what the next few weeks in Lansing look like, what we are working on, and what we can expect, and then maybe talk a little bit about the tradition or about the transition. So lame duck essentially started last week. Several things at the top of the political agenda. The governor has been very open with legislative leadership in both chambers that his number one agenda item remains solid waste fees. Currently, solid waste fees are at 37 cents a ton. We're talking about municipal landfill solid waste fees. They're some of the lowest in the country. The governor has wanted to get these fees raised for a couple of years now. He's been focused on them, putting together work groups, et cetera. And it seems to be the cost of doing business for the legislature. We'll see how true that remains, but that is his number one priority, is to get as much money into environmental programs like the 201 cleanup program, amongst other pieces, before he leaves office. The legislature does not have that listed as a priority. The legislature has probably two pieces that are at the top of the priority list right now. Number one and two probably are the paid sick leave and minimum wage ballot initiatives that they put into place right after the voters collected the necessary signatures. Those passed the Senate last week, and we anticipate swift House action this week, essentially returning those two pieces back to status quo. If you remember, the bills that are moving through will essentially take the tip wage credit and the wage increase back to what they were before that ballot initiative collected the requisite number of signatures to go on the ballot. And both of those things, both the tip credit and the wage increase, will be eliminated and returned most likely. I think that there will be a lot of discussions around not necessarily those two pieces. I believe that there is an agreement with the executive office on those two pieces, But as soon as you move past those, I think that the governor really wants to take a look at those solid waste fees. So the number one thing that legislators are hoping to use, if they're willing to acknowledge the solid waste fee increase, would be the supplemental. What we've done in trying to work together with the Executive Office and the Public Works Commissioner, you'll see the letter from the Public Works Commissioner in front of you that details the project that we are working to get into the supplemental yet in lame duck. It's a $3 million ask. The delegation's been briefed. It's for infrastructure improvements on some of the drainage issues that deal with some of the drainage issues. It's a $3 million essentially filter or drain to help with the waste going into Lake St. Clair. I would say that it is the number one priority that we are going for in the supplemental. Of course, 1A, 1B being more money for community mental health. The supplemental, by all intents and purposes, is shaping up to be a Christmas tree supplemental, as they call it in Lansing, which includes a lot of different shiny ornaments. The governor does have line item veto power in that supplemental, and so it is really early. What seems like 2 or 3 weeks in lame duck will really be as long of a spurt that the legislature's been in session all year. They came in January. We're done, with real work. Obviously for spring break, they took 2 weeks, came back, and then took the entire summer. And it's been a very light fall. So you can imagine the majority of legislative activity really in the 2-year session will be jammed into this 3 or 4 week time period. We're through the first week, and so what you've seen is the pictures start to get a little bit more clear. Bills have started to move. Committees have started to tip their hand on what they do plan to move and what they don't. And I think that if you look at the report that I put together, the high level stuff is listed in those things. One other piece I wanted to make you aware of is the paid union leave time. That's a piece that we're watching pretty closely. We don't know what the final version of that looks like. And again, so much of this is going to depend on what the governor is willing to talk about and what he's not. I think that if the legislature is willing to play ball on those tipping fees, there's going to be a lot of bills and a lot of different moving pieces that you're going to have to play defense on. So those bills moved out of the Senate, 25-13. The House is considering them this week and next, and something that we'll definitely be watching for. So I wanted to put those two things. The MERS articles that we printed out talks a little bit about that minimum wage piece, talks about a few things that were predictions on what might pass and what might die. But for us to list the 150 bills that could impact county activity and that could pass between now and the end of the year would be pretty mind-numbing. Specifically, bills that impact public health code and bills that we are working on that would impact time of sale for septic and sewer inspections. There's just a lot of different individual bills. So what we're hoping for is to get a pretty good idea of what they do through this week. The 5-day rule in the Constitution demands that every bill before it is passed has to sit in each chamber for 5 days. We will know kind of what bills are on legislative leadership agenda by the end of this week. And our hope is to be able to get out and position ourselves well enough so that the final 2 weeks are not as difficult as they could be. So it does not seem to be, I would say, as crazy of a lame duck as it was 2 years ago or the 2 years before that. It seems to be some very high-level issues that kind of each of the legislative leaders and the governor hope to accomplish. The most recent one, and I would say the one that's grabbing the most headlines, of course, are the bills that would reform the Secretary of State and Attorney General powers with the incoming administration, of course, of the other party from the current legislature. There's a desire from the legislature to put some checks and balances in to make sure that they have a voice should the incoming Attorney General decide to shut them out of court cases, to shut them out of her activity. So, and on the Secretary of State side, the bills take away the ability for the Secretary of State to maintain the campaign finance oversight for the state. So very controversial bills, not bills necessarily that would impact, county activity as much, but certainly bills that will be part of the horse trading as we start to get into, the individual bills that will impact county activity as those votes are started to manufacture. So very broad update for now. We hope to have a written update with actually some very specific bills heading into the final 2 weeks. But hoping to give a picture of kind of all the moving pieces and then answer any questions that anybody may have about specific bills or proposals.
Very good. Gary, I appreciate you coming up here on short notice. One thing is, it might behoove you to take advantage of our system to enter some of the information into it electronically so that we can all get it hopefully earlier than
Fair enough.
when we're sitting down. That's one. Two, I need a motion to receive and file. We have a motion by Romano, support by Drolet. We have a rather mixed number of speakers. Commissioner Majak.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good to see you here today, Gary. So my questions pertain to the minimum wage bill, and as far as where are we at on the status of that, I'm reading here that it passed by the Senate, so does it have to go to the House and then the governor next? Where are we at with that one?
Yeah, so the bill passed last week, 25-13 out of the Senate. We anticipate the House caucusing on it on Tuesday and starting to move it through the process pretty quickly, most likely Thursday or Tuesday of next week.
Okay, the House caucus, you mean that's the Republican caucus because they control
It'll
the
most likely
House?
pass on party line.
Okay, and then it will go to the governor's desk, and I presume that he would sign that into place, is that right?
Yeah, I would say that that's probably the biggest wild card for lame duck is what the governor's willing to do. The word on the street, if you will, is that that was a 3-house deal in House, Senate, and governor, in that they had to take the step of putting the minimum wage hike in place. So it is state law. So in order to take that step and not allow for it to go to the voters, they had to have some pretty good, I would say, predictability on the governor's willingness to sign the amendments that are now being drafted and moved through. So I have not spoken with the governor on this. I would say that these first two pieces seem to be moving towards that direction, and I think it's anticipated that the governor will sign it.
Let me ask you this question. I'm not familiar too much with the ballot proposals that go to the state government, but how does a citizen's petition of a couple 100,000 signatures get introduced to the state legislature, and the legislature takes it up and completely changes that around? My understanding is that, I signed that petition, I got some signatures on that, and we were hoping to get that on the ballot to pass $12 an hour minimum wage by 2022, and here that changes it to 2030, and 36% of the workforce in Macomb County makes $12 an hour or less, and that's a serious concern of me, is wage increase over time. In Macomb County, wages only increased 3.7% over a 5-year period from 2012 to 2016. Those of you on this board, you might have got that SEMCOG economic report, and it was showed some nice statistics and things like that, but I took into account inflation to that, and it's a very serious concern for people who live in Macomb County, that wages are not going up fast enough, and that's why I supported this minimum wage proposal, and here I see what the legislature is doing, and to me, that's unacceptable. And how can it happen that way? How can the legislature override or trump, not Donald Trump, trump what the voters wanted to do with the ballot proposal?
So there's some legal differentiating opinions on this, right? Because the signatures were gathered and presented, and the legislature has the authority to adopt that into law immediately. They did that, and now they are simply amending what is currently state law. They believe that's in their authority to do that. Others argue that they cannot do that in the same session, but I don't know that those legal arguments will hold. I think that as far as the Republicans see, it was a easy adopt and amend strategy, and they're moving it forward.
Okay, and then finally, pertaining to this minimum wage bill, what direction do you have from Macomb County on this, as far as?
The county, I don't believe is taking a position on this at this time. I would say that I should say that both groups, regardless of the outcome, and I do think the outcome will be that they amend it back to status quo, that both groups will just go back to the ballot in 2020. We'll see what.
What do you mean both groups will go back to the
paid
ballot?
sick leave ballot initiative and the minimum wage ballot initiative will just attempt to do what they attempted to do this time around on the ballot.
So you're saying that you're projecting the Republicans and the governor will pass what's into law projected right here, and then in 2022, voters will have to. 2020, sorry. In 2020, voters, this group would have to gather signatures again, a couple hundred.
If they want to move the same ballot initiative forward, they'd have the right to do it again.
But they'd have to do the work and get the signatures. The signatures that were collected this year are gone and moot and done with.
Yeah, and they would have a more favorable governor, so that the legislature would, if they attempted to adopt and amend, they wouldn't be able to because the governor would block it.
I mean, I would go on board as, just on the record of wanting to support what the voters wish for as far as the minimum wage being $12 by 2022, but I know that's late in the ballgame, and they're not going to listen to a Democratic county commissioner from Macomb County on this. So thanks for your time.
Thank you, Commissioner. Next up, Commissioner Kraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Gary, thanks for coming. Just a little tidbit, there's no community mental health in here, and I understand why. The House Cares Task Force, came out with their report, and they introduced a bunch of bills back in May, and I just did a report today just to see where they are, and everything's kind of stuck in committee. So if there's any commissioner that wants that information, I put a one-pager together and gave it to Patty. You're more than welcome to have it, or you can ask me for it. My question to you, Gary, is in the Christmas tree and the ornaments of the supplemental, is any of those ornaments dollars for Macomb CMH?
We're certainly trying. So what we've done, and I think you all know, we've made it a priority of ours in the appropriation process the last few years to go after community mental health dollars. We've been successful, not as successful as I would like, but we've gotten dollars allocated to Macomb CMH. I think it is still a priority, and I do think and I do hope we will see more dollars for community mental health in this supplemental. It won't be the dollar amount that I mentioned on the Public Works project. We're hoping for somewhere from $500,000 to $1 million. So that's what we're currently working on. I think that when we're going through these processes, it's hard to get a lot of the stuff buttoned up in the supplemental until the folks writing the supplemental need something. And so we've armed our folks that when it is time, that they make these things a priority on behalf of the county. So yeah, I certainly hope to get somewhere from $500,000 to $1 million in the supplemental.
Okay. And then one more question, Mr. Chair, if I may. On your list of, since we're talking about the proposals, the marijuana proposal, end of last week I saw Senator Meekhoff was introducing something to change that all up too. Do you have an update on that?
Yeah, so we haven't seen all the details of what they're trying to accomplish with that. Certainly, Senator Meekoff wants to eliminate home grow. So I would say that for commissioners' purposes, the big fight right now on the marijuana front would be, there's certain groups that are looking towards these businesses that are investing, millions of dollars to get up and running. And to get, retail and cultivation and all these things kind of fully funded, et cetera. And then there's another group of folks that kind of represent the activists and the folks that have been pushing, the marijuana side, the home grow folks, as I would say, the free the weed group. And two very different opinions and two very different, one believes that home grow piece is the most important. It's like the kind of craft brew, brewery style, be able to do your own stuff. Where the folks that are spending $6 million on a large cultivation facility think that being able to grow, on your own with really no oversight or regulations is absurd. So they really are very different ends of the spectrum. Those large businesses did not support the ballot initiative in general. That was driven by the activists. It was driven by, the shop owners and folks that have been in the industry for a while. So I think you're going to see a lot of this over the next couple of years out of this legislature incoming, especially where, the Attorney General has made clear that she will side with the activists publicly. And I think that both legislative bodies will not be there. And so the Department of Licensing and Regulatory Affairs has huge oversight and ability to make rules, and how that all shapes up will be really interesting next session. I don't anticipate anything major happening in lame duck outside of maybe the home grow piece, but I don't know where the governor would be or how hard the Senate Majority Leader would want to lean on that piece. There's also some other bills moving forward that change the disclosure requirements on licensees and whether, the background checks and everything is 3 years of bank statements and all those requirements that are really onerous for anyone to try to get on it, even if you want to try to get outside capital. So very high barriers to entry. There's some desire to look at that. So yeah, it will not be the first or last time that cannabis is the subject of conversation over the next 2 years.
Thank you, Gary. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Kleinfeld.
Hi, thank you. I have a couple to ask you, so I'm just going to go real quick on them because I kind of want to figure out where we are and what our position is. On the marijuana bills, are you advocating to get anything into them? Are you advocating any position on our behalf or on anybody else's on that one?
No. No, the county's not weighing in on any sort of cannabis type activities.
Okay, on the union paid leave for government employees, there's one out there for that, correct? That's what
Yes.
Are you advocating a position on that or anything to be put in or taken out? And I think that's 1175, I think, Senate bill?
Yes. So the paid sick leave and the union paid sick leave, I don't know that it's as much of a finished product as the other bill. They did pass it out of the Senate. The county has not taken a position. They've been asked to, and I know that the executive is considering that, but has not taken a position yet.
Okay. Are you advocating, I guess I'm trying to learn process here. Are you advocating on behalf of any of your other clients with respect to that bill?
No.
And when you do that, when you advocate, and this is for any firm that represents different clients, how does that work? When you advocate, if you're advocating for this client, but this client doesn't have a position, do you state who you're advocating for, or do you just when you meet individual legislators, do you tell them you're advocating on behalf of, and do you testify in front of these committees?
No,
Okay.
so it's a lot more facilitation, and yes, anytime we are advocating, we're disclosing who we are talking on behalf of,
Okay.
and the reality is that the legislature, will kind of determine pretty quickly about where everything is heading, and sometimes it's you're advocating for amendments, sometimes you're advocating
Right.
for
And
general
you're going to have
passage.
clients that aren't even related to government, I would assume. So you're going to be advocating for things that are different than you would advocate for us on issues. And I was just trying to learn the process on that. So also I wanted to know about, is there anything in front of them right now regarding the Indigent Defense Council? I know there's
Yes, so-
discussion in Lansing on the,
There was a Senate bill that came out that added a county seat to the Indigent Defense Commission. There was a package of bills that moved earlier, and I'd have to get a refresher on those bills. But there was a package of bills that moved through that kind of codified what the Indigent Defense Commission had recommended with some changes. It was a Verheulen package, and then also added some dollars. We did a lot of work on that. Actually, Al Lorenzo from the executive office did a lot of back and forth on amendments based on what the county would be responsible for versus the state for indigent defense.
okay. So, right, I'm assuming you guys want a little more clarification than what's been out there. Did you have an advocate, a position on the county seat on that board?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly something that we've been advocating. We were pretty entrenched. As you may know, we represent several local governments that deal with this, 18 of them around the state. So outside of the larger local government advocacy groups, we do represent the most units of local government. So we're very much entrenched, and we have 10 full-time, people on our team that do different work for around the state. But the indigent defense piece was a major undertaking. Barb Farah and Kirk Profit took the lead from our team and did a really nice job, I think, from where it started to where it ended.
Okay, with respect to the initiative that the legislature approved the language because there was an initiative and they're changing it now, did you have any advocacy on any part of that bill?
I don't know. I'd have to check on that.
Okay. If you would, I'd
I
appreciate that.
personally did not, but I would, like I said.
Okay.
I can definitely check to see if we have anybody in that space.
Okay. I only have a couple more, I'm sorry. There's an assessing bill out there that I've heard a lot about from local units of government. They're on fire, I guess. But I am hearing that this thing is changing. Like, all of these bills are changing rapidly. There's another one I was going to ask you about was the septic, but they're all changing very quickly. So you have a position one day and they change so much. So I was wondering if we have been advocating at all on that. I didn't know what our position was. I know how cities and townships have felt about it in its original form, and I don't know exactly where it is now. What has our advocacy been on that bill, or has there been any?
I know that there's been some back and forth on the actual bill and as it moves. I don't know what current form it's in, so I can't say what we've done. I think Maryland's probably more up to speed on the assessor bill. I don't know if you like her to
Okay,
speak
so
to
you
it.
haven't been advocating on our behalf with respect to that particular bill?
No, I have not
Okay.
yet. But again, I think that is in the same bucket as the septic bill in that.
Which was my next question.
Yeah, I mean, the reality is these bills aren't worth engaging until they're in some sort of form that you actually think
Okay.
is going to move. Like the septic bill, it was in the environmental, it was in the House Natural Resource Committee. We killed it in that committee, and Representative James Lauer is a individual from the west side of the state. Broke a deal to get it re-referred last week. So it was re-referred to House Local Government. It is now back alive overnight. He is trying to jam it on Wednesday morning all the way through the House. It was on life support and now it is back. So we have a call that we're working to schedule actually tomorrow with the folks from the county to try and see if there's amendments or what we're able to put in there if it does start to move. And that's pretty much the story on all of these individual bills, right? I mean, if they're
Right.
going to move, the getting organized and getting amendments and getting language that the county can live with happens really quickly, and just trying to get it in there as it moves through to make sure that you can kind of keep control of them.
Okay, on that one, we did a resolution, but I understand the bill's changing, and it's changing dramatically, and I don't know if we would do that today. When you get a final form, or you know what you're advocating to go in and out of it on our behalf, could you let us know when you tell us how this all, shook down, what position we ultimately ended up advocating on the septic issue?
Yeah.
And what changes, because I understand it's kind of not even recognizable.
Yeah, I think that there will be a substitute amended and adopted on Wednesday morning for committee on the septic bill. We'll be able to have some sort of direction on where it's heading, and we should be able to tell based on the votes and based on the testimony and everything else,
Okay.
what it looks like. But it's still a first House bill, so it's still in the original chamber of introduction. So it's a long way before that bill gets to the governor's desk and is signed.
Okay, things are moving pretty fast in Lansing right now, though. Okay, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Smith?
Thanks, Gary, for coming up here and doing this. I just wanted to ask you about 4986, and I really hadn't heard about this, veterans property tax exemption, and wondering, this talks about reimbursing local governments. Is that something that's moving along, or where
Yeah.
is that set?
It's a return bill. It's in House tax. We hope to get it out this week. It was up last week for consideration. Representative Tender is the chair of that, so we're hoping to get that bill moved and signed by the governor by the end of the year.
All right, thanks.
All right, Commissioner Carabelli?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the info. Couple of things. Is there anything that we are unaware of that you're working on behalf of the county or any county up in Lansing that's going to affect the Board of Commissioners and how we operate, or as the county as a whole and how we operate? Is there anything that's up in Lansing right now? Or is there anything that your office specifically is working on?
I don't believe so. I don't know what you're aware of, but
I'm not aware of anything, and this is why I'm asking.
Yeah,
Is
no,
there-
I don't think so. I mean, you also know that we represent Wayne County, which has a county executive as well. So I'm unsure. I'm not.
Okay. Then the next question I have, in this whole Commissioner Myjack's bill, what's it called, the marijuana thing or whatever it is? Commissioner Myjack. He's not even paying attention. I'm just playing. I overheard some Oakland County, I believe it's Oakland County, cities that are opting out 100%, and they did it before, was it the 10th? Pardon me?
Cities can opt out anytime under the new law. They're not required to
Okay.
opt out.
And there's nothing in there about counties or anything like that at all? It's just strictly for cities? What about townships?
Townships, cities, villages, they have the authority to opt out. They actually have to opt out under the ballot initiative law. The medical marijuana piece, and it gets a little confusing because the medical marijuana stuff included an opt-in. So cities had to go through the process of opting in and allowing for which type of facilities that they wanted in which communities. The recreational language includes an opt-out, but at the same time, you would still have to pass an ordinance with specific zones by which this activity can happen. So until, there will be a lot of communities that opt out right away. There's a lot of city attorney, local attorneys that are recommending an opt-out until, for example, the rules settle down over the next 12 months. So Laura is going to be deeply entrenched in rulemaking for the next 12 months on recreational marijuana They have a lot of authority. And part of those obviously will be some of the local authority, but most of it is secure in the zoning powers, because a local can decide, obviously, you know, where these facilities go. They can decide whether or not these facilities need a special use exemption, whether or not the cultivation goes in an industrial zone, and whether the retail can go downtown. All that stuff remains with the local control. So the long answer is, yeah, township attorney, local attorneys are all kind of sifting through. And I'd say the biggest indicator of where they're heading is what the locality's population did on that vote. So if you see, you know, a local community with 85% support, you can assume that their local board will opt in relatively soon, and vice versa. So we're monitoring kind of all the different ordinances and what they look like and what the state's going to do.
Okay, and then in a nutshell, the taxation portion of it, I heard some stuff. There was talking about even making some changes and some different things. Right now, the way I'm understanding it, it's like a 10% sales tax.
It's 10% excise tax plus a sales tax.
Where does that 10% tax go?
It's actually broken down in the bill, and I could get that for you. It's got, you know, sheriffs, counties, whichever locality the facility is in. So you get a distribution from the fund based on how many facilities you have in your specific location. The sheriffs get a chunk, et cetera. Schools, roads are the other.
That's why I
think
know
it's
it broke down, but I didn't know, and I think even the local government gets some of that money back too, do they not?
Yeah, if they opted in
If
and
they
have
opted.
facilities. So it's like 25% schools, 25% roads, 25% locals, and then there's another breakdown. So I'll get you the numbers.
Yeah, I'd be curious. All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, I think that'd be a good idea. Commissioner Drolet.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks, Gary, for your report. I appreciated the fact that a couple of the commissioners were asking what, you know, whether you were advocating on behalf of the county on a couple of issues that I think are, the reason I think those questions are interesting is because we're not 100% sure. Though you've been directed to some degree by a resolution that we passed dealing with the septic issue. So that's something that I think your firm would be clear that, or at least have some indication of the board's position, I suppose, on that issue. And I guess I would be helpful in future reports if there was a sheet of paper that said, here's the things that we've gotten direction on to act on behalf of the county, whether that's from the executive or the Public Works Department or this board. So we would have like a list of the things that you're actually taking a position on behalf of the county. And I know that's kind of difficult when we don't really take, at least as a board, we don't take too many positions, you know, not very often. But I would hope, for example, you know, I've got the letter here from Candace Miller to Mark Hackle requesting the $3 million be asked for at the state legislative level, dealing with the Chapelton Drain Basin and expanding the capacity. I would hope that if there's a chance for that to happen in Lame Duck, that your firm would make that the highest priority that I'm aware of for this board, because I think it's something that we could unanimously get behind, that it's going to give us the biggest bang for our buck. The plan that Ms. Miller put together and that I believe Hackle and others support is going to go, is the most cost-effective plan for dramatically increasing our ability to better treat water before it's released in the event of rainstorms and so forth. So to me, going to Lame Duck, that's the highest priority for the county that may be achievable. You know, things like whether it's marijuana or minimum wage, there may be division, you know, on the board on something like that. But I would hope that there's unanimity on something like this, and that we could find a way as a board to direct you to take that back and say, this would be something that would benefit the entire county. Frankly, it'd benefit the region, anybody along, you know, Lake St. Clair, and I think is potentially achievable. And while $3 million is a lot of money to us, it's not as big a deal for the state. So I guess what I'd ask is that that this board in some manner gives some indication to your firm that we would like this to be a priority for you moving forward, for the firm moving forward in trying to secure that $3 million for that project. So I don't know how we would do that, whether we'd get a resolution on an agenda or whether we could do it somewhat informally, but I would, hope that we could direct the firm and that you guys could advocate on that particular project.
Yeah, I mean,
Point of order on that real quick.
Yes, Commissioner Kleinfeld.
Very quick point of order. We first have to establish if we're in agreement with the county exec's office, because we can't issue him a directive to go and lobby on anything, but clearly they're in favor of this. So I look at that more as thinking we should join them and create a resolution from the board. But with respect to giving him direction, I don't think we can do that. So that's just my point of order, and I didn't turn on the microphone, I'm sorry.
Well,
Fair
the
enough.
good news-
Thank you, Commissioner Kleinfeld. Commissioner Drollet.
thank you, Mr. Chair. With respect to that, I think it's unclear whether we can or can't direct, advise the lobbyist as to what our priorities are. And I see Marilyn has come up to the microphone, so I'll defer to her for a moment here.
Just a little bit about this. Come here in the questions, and I think some of this is in his preview, and I'd like to explain a little bit. But specifically your question, it is a priority, and that's why Candace sent it to Mark, and that is what GCSI's lobbying is. I spoke to Diana Farrington and all the delegation in the House. Okay, it's really, as you know, it's very political in climate at all times, no matter what side of the aisle you are on. So remember this, and it's not as easy just sending a resolution and we all kumbaya and we say, yeah, this is what we want. We have a really bigger problem in the Senate. And we don't like to kind of keep giving all the details, just know that we're all on the same page, but there's a lot of work that goes in there. Currently, and Candace would speak to this herself, her and Senator Meekhoff are like at odds, okay? He's not going to want to do anything to help her. They had that kind of situation back in the summer when they had words that have cut pretty deep. So right now, we are concentrating on the House as getting this out. When we get into the Senate, we cannot now stand behind Candace wants this because it'll probably get killed. We will then turn to the executive wants it, and we'll have a different story. So it's kind of difficult for us at this time to kind of intricately tell you. There's just so much strategy that goes behind it. If certain people think certain ones want it, it doesn't happen. I hate to tell you, but that's just the reality of what we're dealing with. So we believe we'll get it out of the House, and we're all on the same page. But in the Senate, we have to have a different strategy. So just know that it is very much a priority. Our community mental health is very much a priority. I spoke with Diana today, and they're going to ask for as much as we can get. When it comes to policies when are decided, what we've never had before, and I recognize that having served 6 years there, is that GCSI is probably one of the most leading lobbyist firms recognized. And mostly, Phil can tell you this, Leon, everybody that's worked up there. It is all based on relationship building up there. That's what happens. So what happens is my job is to find out from the department heads, not Gary, what's happening. I would tell you Kristen Seeloff in assessing immediately identified the problems and the impact that legislation was going to have in Macomb County. She not only identified it, she put together a solid report of the actual impact to Macomb County and gave me solutions. I then in turn determine where we're at. I have to contact GCSI, and then we have to strategize a plan. They were able to get us a meeting with second in charge, Sally Durfee, in Lansing, the Treasury, because it was Treasury's #1 agenda. It wasn't even a lawmaker, it was Treasury. And, Phil knows most of this. So when she looked at that, she was shocked. She said, my God, look at this report. She goes, would she be interested in talking to us? We say, absolutely. Well, lo and behold, this was all going on during the summer. They actually read her report, and I give her all the credit, and I told everybody to listen. Kristen was single-handedly put this bill together. They took her suggestions, and that's where it got revised. It wasn't through anybody, but through her efforts. It was phenomenal that actually happened, and Treasury looked at those reports. Bill came to us back in the summer, identifying a problem right away with point of sale, and he starts telling us. He has been sending us continuous information. How does it impact Macomb? How do we fix it? We just got an email today at 12:30. We're still trying to rev it through. GCSI will get a hold of our legislature, make sure they have it. They're going to the committee on Wednesday on the 5th. Make sure our department and the impact it has is being told. The story is being told in Lansing. We've never had that. We haven't had that coordinated effort. We usually are being reactive rather than proactive, or Wayne County or Oakland County leads the charge. So it's sometimes a little difficult for us to get to on a timely basis because we're getting into today at 12:30. We'll have a conference call tomorrow. Bill will be on the phone. He will give us all the impact because nobody knows this impact of these bills more than department heads that are actually doing the work. So we're always advocating to make certain that Macomb isn't going to be impacted by legislation that's happening up there. So when Gary's asked those questions, it's just moving really fast. But that's what I do. I determine whether or not we have a solid case, and if we do, we strategize. I'll make one more point. During the summer, the prosecutor contacted Mark directly and said, listen, there's this horrible bill about videoing children, and we didn't catch it, wasn't under the radar, but Eric caught it right away. And Mark called me and said, hey, get that bill killed, do whatever you got to do, get a hold of Gary. So I got a hold of Gary, and I said, we got a problem. Gary says to me, well, I don't know, this prosecutor association, they're neutral on it. All the prosecutors are for it. What's our argument? Why are we? I go, I don't know, but you know what? There's not a prosecutor in the state of Michigan that's not more protective of children than Eric Smith. If he said there's a problem, there must be a problem, so figure it out. He goes, I'm on it. So he gets hold of Derek and Eric, and they all start talking. Next thing you know, Eric's up in testimony in the committee. Lo and behold, the bill got killed completely. So credit to GCI putting that all together, a bill that looked like it was actually going to go, but the testimony of our prosecutor, the efforts of the Gary and putting it all together, the bill got killed. So Macomb is actually starting to be recognized. We're starting to play in this, and on a basis of fact, which we've never done. One last thing, small cell. Everybody was involved with small cell. They thought this was horrible, Wayne County, Oakland County. We didn't take a position. We watched it. We weren't for it. We weren't against it. There was enough votes for that bill to go through. It's a small cell, his legislation was AT&T's number one priority.
Point of
Already
order,
went
Mr.
through.
Chairman. We got questions the commissioners want to ask, with all due respect.
Oh, okay.
We all understand the process. We all know your working process. We know how the process works between our department heads and through you and President
Yeah.
Fucci. We're all political people. We've done this before.
Okay, well, I was
So
trying
we're
to
not
answer
anything
some.
new.
Yeah, I just
listen to
wanted to
this.
try to answer some of these questions as
Oh,
what's
I
happening. So
appreciate
we
this.
want to
Wow.
be able to give you as much information on a very timely basis so that everybody's included because we really want everybody's impact. So that was basically answering some of your questions.
All right, thank you.
If I still have the floor, Mr. Chair.
Did you have 15 minutes ago?
Yeah, I think you did.
I can't remember.
Well, thank you. First, I'm glad and appreciate and understand how hard the executive is working on some of these issues that are very important to Macomb County. So that's greatly appreciated, and I know the kind of work that GCSI can do on behalf of any of their clients, particularly Macomb County. So that's a great asset. So it's good to know that that is happening behind the scenes. I guess what my questions were more related to Commissioner Kleinfeld's questions about what bills Macomb County was taking a position on, what things were being worked on. And it was obvious that she was not aware necessarily, and nor it would be easy to be what some of those positions are. I think, and I don't think it's easy for you to be, GCSI to be aware what the board's priorities might be, because the only way we could be, I guess, is if we sent you a resolution, or something to that effect. So I guess, given the information that we're receiving here today, I'm just hoping that we can get more of a concise Macomb County affected bills. Here they are, and here's positions we're taking on them, and why they're important to Macomb County. Someone's got to be proactive in putting that priority list together. Sounds like the executive is very hard at work at doing that, but it'd be nice to know what that then list is. And I was just simply advocating that project regarding the Shepparton Station, that be clarified by this board as a priority of this board, because it's something I think it's, correct me if I'm wrong, it sounds, I don't realize giving an award to a Girl Scout troop is political sometimes in Lansing, but it's relatively less political. And I think potentially doable, but you know better than I, but it would be great if that could be delivered on, and if our board got together behind that and did anything we could do to help you on it. I would hope that, for example, overcoming issues in the Senate, I would hope that Senator Brandenburg, I know he's lame duck, but he's right on the water. We would hope that he would be able to deliver on that and so forth. But
Yeah, and at first, I would always encourage the board to take positions on things that you want to take positions on. You are all elected. You speak with a voice. The delegation respects your voice and understands that you have a connection to their constituency, the same way that the executive does when he's in a news article. and taking a position on whatever might be going up there in the same way the Public Works Commissioner does. I think it's all helpful for us. Anytime you all decide to go on the record and say this is important, it's important to us. And I do think that that's the best way for us to be able to go up and wave that piece of paper around and say this is important for the board, this is a priority of the executive, et cetera. You know, it's always going to be difficult, you know, identifying what the position of the county is, and depending on who you talk to, and on what day, right? But make no mistake about it, the $3 million project's the #1 priority for lame duck for the county. So, you know, it's hard to say that with how much work we're doing on community mental health, because it makes it feel like we're diminishing the importance of the dollars we're trying to get in lame duck on community mental health. So, you know, I think that, you know, I don't know that there's any perfect way to lobby or advocate on behalf of a local unit of government that has multiple moving pieces. I think that right now, especially heading into the last few weeks, the MO in Macomb is and has been since I've been doing it now for 7.5 years, not to take a ton of formal public positions, but to try to work through issues. You've got a divided delegation, 5 and 5 in the House, 2 and 1 in the Senate, oftentimes in very different places on all these things. And quite frankly, I think the county is oftentimes in different places. But these are the type of things that we do take a lead on, and hopefully we will be able to deliver the $3 million.
Well, we have a very limited time in lame duck and on this board, so I don't know if there's any time between, that would be effective to get a resolution put together in support of this particular grant. And I would hope that our divided delegation of Macomb County would come together for something like this. So, thank you, Mr. Chair. And yeah, please do not look at anything I've said here as any sort of a criticism of anything that's being done by either the executive or by your firm. It's more about our process of how we can communicate our priorities than it is anything else.
Yeah, and I would reiterate, I would encourage the board doing resolutions on any piece of legislation, especially when it's a unanimous resolution, on any piece of legislation in Lansing, so that we know where you stand at all times.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, for your lenience. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Commissioner. Last on the list is Commissioner Carabelli. Okay. From myself, Gary, thank you very much for being here. If you can let us, some of this stuff is changing hourly. We understand that. I think between Marilyn and the people in the executive's office, yourself and this board, we have what we believe is the best for Macomb County in mind, and we're all working towards that end. Hopefully, they don't screw it up in Lansing.
It will definitely be their fault if they do.
And I wouldn't be surprised if they do. We have a motion and we have a support to receive and file. Please vote. Thank you very much. The vote hasn't come up yet. Number 8, correspondence. Can we do all 3 in one motion?
So moved.
We have a motion by Romano. We have support by Grolette. Any comments or questions? All in favor, please vote. Number, come on, machine. Passed 10-0. Number 9, new business. Any new business from commissioners? Commissioner Kleinfeld.
Thank you. I just want to give a very, very quick report on Mac's positions with all the stuff that's flying around in Lansing. We took positions on a couple of things. One of the most heated thing that we dealt with was the wages and the paid leave. And so it was very clear, commissioners felt this way, commissioners felt this way, and we decided to stay neutral because some of us felt the same way about how it was handled with the initiative. So we stayed neutral on that. We supported an opioid vial bill that requires like a lock on little vials that have the opioids so that other people can't get into them. The assessing bill, they ended up not supporting the septic bill, ended up not supporting the septic bill. But it's changed dramatically from when we did our resolution, and it's removed a lot of the things that we supported. On the other side, with regard to the commissioners in outlying areas, they were just against it from the get-go. So we just decided we're just not gonna be part of that one. Supported the assessing bill. I wasn't sure how I felt on that. And the last thing is that the MAC is pushing for two county seats on the Indigent Defense Council, and seeking legislative support and clarification on the payment schedule for them to give the money back to us to make us whole on what we're spending. That's it, thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other new business? Commissioner Carabelli.
Carabelli, would you like to share that with all of us?
They were taking a position on assessing, Mac was?
Yes, after the changes that were made,
Which, I don't,
there,
we're not all.
okay, so the assessing bill has a lot of pieces in it, but the biggest changes were they wanted everybody to be a level 4, and there aren't enough level
No.
4s in the state to accommodate.
No.
They decided not to take away all the assessing from all of the cities and villages and townships. So what they said is, if there's entities who aren't getting the job done at that level and they're given an opportunity to correct and they don't, then they will eventually take that control away. But because they're not taking it away, and because the bill changed so dramatically, they decided to get behind the current bill.
Thank you, Commissioner Carabelli. Any other new business? Hearing and seeing none.
Quick announcement, sorry. Just, I
Make
made
it a quick announcement.
I'll make it as long as I want to.
Okay.
However, I might not be here for the next few days. I might have to fly down to Florida. My sister, that from down in Florida, is in a little bit of an accident, and she's not doing great. So my brother and I might be flying out here. So you might not see me for the next couple of meetings. So I just want to let you know where I'll.
We'll try to handle it without you, Chair.
Thank you.
Shit.
You're welcome.
She okay?
Hope she's okay. Yeah.
All right. Any other new business? Public participation. Seeing and hearing none. We have a motion to adjourn by Groulet, support by Sauger. All in favor, please vote. She get it.
See you Wednesday. Hey.